Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us for another episode of the Board Game Barrage podcast. This is episode number 42. This is a big episode for all the Douglas Adams fans in the audience. Appropriate. So on today's episode, our main topic, we're holding hands. You guys can't see this unless you're watching on our live feed. We don't have a live feed. Right. But we're all holding hands. And we do that anyway, but we're doing that especially tight on this episode because we're talking about cooperative games. This is going to be another list episode, and we're going to be talking about our top 5 cooperative games. So this is a chance for us to really bond, as we always do.
That's more than we usually do.
I think you've invented like a new Patreon model, Mark, where what we should do is have a live stream of the podcast, but there's only one slot. And it's $100 a month, okay. And you can watch us record
it live. That's a great idea.
Yeah,
every week.
You can see us holding hands. You could see the gym shorts and flip flops that I've got going on with the hoodie.
They could just type what they want us to do.
Once per episode, we'll read anything you write.
Although I think that model's already been established. Yeah. Anyhow. So, but before we get into our kumbaya of top co-op games, let's talk about games we've played. Kalen, what did you play?
So one of the games that we got to play recently is Shh. And this is spelled S-S-H?
I think S-H-H.
Okay, well, I'm just going to record it both ways, and then you can... It's spelled S-H-H.
Right. I'll definitely just cut out the right one. I'll make sure that the right one is in.
So this is a Paco game.
Yeah.
So this is a company that makes games that are literally the size of a pack of gum. So the cards themselves are very skinny and small. This is a co-op game. So in the spirit of us holding hands and kissing.
Too far.
Okay.
We've never once kissed.
Well, that was for the private lives.
Right. Yeah, right.
So yes. So in a game of Shh, everyone has a set of letter cards, and those are all consonants because the vowels are placed in the middle of the table. And you are collectively trying to spell words together, but you can't tell anyone what letters you have, and you have to play in order. Each game, you're allowed to pass up to as many players as there are, so you have a chance to pass. If you see a better word, maybe someone else will have the next letter for it. But in order to score the vowels, which can be used in every word, you have to make a word that's at least 5 letters long. So a perfect score is you've played all the consonants in correct words and used all 5 vowels in words that are at least 5 letters long. This is actually really fun for what it is, and it's probably my favorite Pac-O game. The card art is dumb. It has like the letter F on it and then a clip art of a flame. It's pretty, I guess, but...
It's not clip art.
It's kind of like stock images.
Yeah, stock image. Stock art.
You're right. It's not food chain magnate levels.
Right.
Yeah.
Clip art.
That's right.
For a small word game that you can fit in your pocket like this one is actually quite good and has surprised me every time with how much fun we have with this in 10 or 15 minutes.
Yeah, I agree. I had a really great time. I hadn't played it before.
Yeah, the best parts I feel for this game for me are... if someone has a word in mind that they're sort of laying down the starting blocks for, and they're just looking around the table to make sure that everyone knows where they're going, and there's inevitably one person that doesn't quite know what they're going for, and everyone's like, you can see the word, right? You know what we're doing? And then... or
the consonant they need for their really long word has already been played, but they haven't realized
it
yet.
Yeah.
And they're smiling and thinking they've got this great, groundbreaking, 7-letter word.
Right.
But instead you lose the whole game.
Yeah.
What happened in our game? Christina led us toward Darling or something? Who was that?
We started spelling out... we got to
Darl.
D-A-R-L.
We got to Darl, yeah.
There's not many options here.
And to get to Darling, we had to use every pass we had
in
the whole game.
Yeah, in the first... that was the first word. Yeah, right.
That's funny. That is Shh. And that is part of the Paco game series.
I played just one. This is a cooperative game, and the premise and the mechanisms are really simple for this one. One person is the guesser. There's going to be a list of words that they're going to have in front of them, which they can't see. They're going to pick a number at random, which will assign a word, and then everybody else is going to write one word as a clue to make them try to guess that word. So if the word was, say, Godzilla, everybody writes one single word. And then the clue giver closes his eyes, and then everybody compares clues. any clues that match are thrown out. So if more than one person wrote lizard, lizard is now thrown out. And then you reveal the clues, and the clue giver can guess, and they're trying to guess the word. It's a really simple game. It leads to interesting situations where you want to be clever, because if you are too obvious, you're likely to match a lot. So if for Godzilla you wrote lizard, you would have a number of lizards, and then Japan, and then monster. If a couple people match lizard and a couple people match monster, and all you have left is Japan, the guesser is trying to guess Godzilla based on Japan. So you get in a situation where you want to be clever so that you have a unique word. But then what happens is everybody is clever, and then the obvious words are not even used. So you get a situation where you have like Godzilla as a clue, but nobody writes lizard or monster or Japan because they're freaked out. So
what is the name of this game?
Just One. Just One.
Did you tell us this at the beginning?
I did.
He did. I didn't realize he had said the name. See, he said, "I have just one," and I thought he was saying.
I said I have just one.
Well, you played
that's the
just
game?
one. Yeah,
Yeah, it's called Just One.
yeah.
I
you said
stopped
something like,
listening because you never said the game.
Right.
Oh.
Well, because you said no, he did say the name of the game.
I
But
definitely
he said
said the
like,
name of the game.
I played just one, and I was thinking the exact same thing that you did.
What's
it's
the
like, where's the
game?
name?
Oh,
What's the name?
okay.
You
Like,
launched into the description.
No, I
you
think
knew.
let's roll the tape. Let's roll the tape.
Well,
and just say
let's-
that. Yeah. No, we're not going to roll the tape now. I'm going to edit it so it sounds like I did it right, which I did, to be fair. Anyhow, really simple game, super simple to teach, as I have literally just done. But you can bring this out with family and friends, and it would be fun, I'm sure.
I have just one question.
Nice.
Do you actually have?
Yes, I have a question, Neelan.
Okay.
I thought of the question and then backtracked.
Back
You're
to
overwhelmed with your
to the
cleverness.
joke.
Yeah.
I'm just smiling. I see this game in teams in competition. When it's a co-op,
Yeah.
where is the like? I get it. You're
Yeah.
trying to get people to guess the word, and that's fun.
Right.
But is it sort of?
So
It
that's a good
doesn't
question.
feel as fun as like concept.
Right. When I first read the rules of this game, or I saw a review or something, I assumed it was teams because it seemed like it made more sense that way. The way that the co-op works is you have 11 cards that constitutes a game, and when the guesser's turn to guess, he has 3 options, or he has 2 options, I guess. He can guess, and if he gets it right, you score that card as a point. But if he gets it wrong, you lose that card, and you also lose the next card that has been played. So you lose a potential point. Or you can pass, which isn't as fun, because it's a party game. So the idea is like an 11 is a perfect score, and it has like a chart a la Hanabi.
Cool.
Another game we all played recently was Hamsterrolle. This is a really fun dexterity game. Pretty light, but really, really cool, where you have this giant wooden wheel. It's like maybe 1.5 feet across. Is that
Sounds
right?
Yeah. Sounds right.
And it's got sort of notches in different positions around the inside edge of it. Every player or every team has a collection of pieces of different colors, sizes, and shapes. And the aim is just to place them on the wheel without knocking anything off, as sort of many other dexterity games of this type. You keep going around placing a piece until one person runs out of pieces. Anytime a piece falls off, you collect that piece for your subsequent turns. What's pretty clever about this is that you have to place shapes further and further along the notches on the wheel. So you can't ever play it safe. There's sort of like a minimum distance you have to play forward. And part of the fun is figuring out how far ahead you can go without rolling the wheel too much, because as it starts to roll, pieces slide up the other end and potentially fall off. So it's just got a really fun, big physicality to it that's just really clever. And there's that Jenga-esque dexterity element of sort of pushing against the system and figuring out where the weaknesses are, how far you can push it before the whole thing just collapses at the other end. It's really simple and a lot of fun. I think the best part of it for us is every time you knock a shape off, everyone shouts, Hamsterrolle!
Hamsterrolle strikes me as like a strict upgrade in many ways to Riff Raff, which is the boat, put stuff on the boat. And I really like Riff Raff, and it, in the right collection, you'd have both. But Hamsterrolle is just simpler to set up, simpler to understand, and just a little less finicky. Super great. Everyone's screaming, and it doesn't have the problem in Jenga where if everything falls, the game is over. This game still continues onward, whereas Jenga, you spend 10 minutes resetting it back up, basically.
Right.
But I do want to share a little anecdote here because our friend Mark was unable to play Hamsterrolle, which is strange because, as you might remember, he was attending BarageCon. Imagine this. The last night of BarageCon, Mark's new girlfriend, whom no one has met, shows up at BarageCon, and then somehow in the middle of the night, all evidence of Mark disappears. We go to bed at like 2 or 3 a.m., We get up at 7. Mark is gone.
As was told the night before when I said, hey, we're going to be leaving early in the morning.
What do you think we thought was happening, Mark? I thought you were dead.
What?
It's a scary place in Big Bear.
We thought bears got you.
Okay,
It's dark.
So
New person who I don't know shows
Right.
up, and bam, you're gone.
Okay, that makes sense. So new person shows up who I said was coming. I go to sleep saying, hey, we're going to leave early in the morning. The morning comes, I have gone because the early part of the morning has
But
passed.
where did you go?
That's right. That's like
You
I
had
can
time
see
to pack up your board games.
That's right. All right, I get this. I understand how you'd be scared. I'm sorry. I'm glad we're holding hands. I'm glad that I can help you through this tough time.
Just wanted to share that anecdote with the listeners. Imagine my surprise when you showed up at the next time to record the podcast.
Right, you're
with
already
us.
writing the eulogy, I assume.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I kind of have that pre-written for
Yeah,
the two of you.
Just hoping you're able to use it.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
got a lot of Mensa references
Sure.
and sort of
Old age. He was
Well,
time to go.
And the last thing that you did was sort of lose in a series of Go games and chess games to Kalen.
Wait, what?
It's just kind of like, since you're dead, no one will be able to.
Verify the difference.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's like our final battle of wits. You know,
Right.
you lost
Yeah.
sort of best of 7, and you didn't even win a game.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, let's just hope you die first. Speaking of chess, though, real quick aside, it's the World Chess Championship, so in case anybody's interested in watching some good chess.
Have you been watching it?
I have been. Well, first match was 7 hours long, so
Oh, wow.
tough to watch the whole thing. So I checked back in and out and then watched the highlights.
How's our American hombre doing?
With the first game down, it's tied half to half point. Best of 12.
Is 7 hours typical?
That's considered a long game.
Okay.
But it's classic, so that they're gonna be long.
And they have unlimited time?
No, they don't have limited time. They have 100 minutes until the 40th move, when they get another 30 minutes, and then at another point they get another. But you get 30 seconds every move added to your time. So every move you make, you get another 30 seconds added. But good match, crazy match. It's just ridiculous. Watching analysis of their games, it's just crazy.
The people doing the analysis must be using computers
Yes,
to even
they are.
give them
the computer
analysis.
Yeah, exactly. And the computer analysis is just fascinating. Afterwards, they have a timeline where the computer analyzes who was up or down based on like moves, and then they calculate mistakes, blunders, or different classifications of errors. In these games, are like 1 or 2. It's just crazy.
You know, I was contemplating adding a news section to this podcast,
Okay.
For things like Keyforge coming out or Discover Lands Unknown.
Oh, like
but,
news?
But it's good that you're sharing with the listeners what they really want to hear about, which is 7-hour chess match.
Right.
The latest hotness.
I mean,
the board game scene.
7-hour chess. Yeah, exactly. Before we move on to our feature topic, just a real quick note. We would love if you guys would follow us, like us on Facebook. We are closing in on 1,000 followers. And so we are eager to hit that milestone. So if you're interested, and there's some nice discussion there. There's a lot of Kalen's photography featured there. So please follow us on Facebook. Also, subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're adding some of the podcasts are up there. We're also adding other video content. We've added the video from our live streams of Lords of Hellas, Azul, and what else did we play?
Lowlands.
So that's all up there for you if you're interested in watching that.
That's youtube.com/BoardGameBarrage.
There you go. And also subscribe because we've got some stuff in the works, including a pretty big,
Elaborate.
elaborate thing coming up in the next few weeks. So that's a little bit of a teaser Rooney.
Also, an upcoming contest. So stay tuned.
Yes.
On Facebook and YouTube.
YouTube, yes. Okay. So with that out of the way, let's get it going. Co-ops. Cooperative is what that stands for. So, we're going to be going around and talking about our top 5 favorite cooperative games. Before we get into this, I don't think we've ever explicitly mentioned this when it comes to our top 5s, but in an effort to avoid crossover, because we're only talking about 5 games apiece, we have Christina help us out here, the lovely Christina.
Very lovely.
Yes.
But be afraid of your girlfriend. Does she listen to this?
She does listen to this.
Because you disappeared in the night last time I saw her.
Right. Yeah, she kidnapped me. Right. So we sent our list to Christina. She lets us know if we need to add some more games to our list in order to avoid crossover. So there are games that I think a lot of us would agree on that would normally be on all of our lists, but in an effort to touch
like
on...
Codenames.
Not a co-op.
Not on this list, but on most lists.
Okay.
There was like 10 episodes in a row where it was like Codenames,
one
Codenames,
person had
Codenames.
Codenames.
All right.
Don't I know that Codenames is not
live in the present.
a co-op?
Kalen.
Well, do you think that I'm...
Yes. The next word,
What?
yes. The answer is yes to that. With that done, let's start doing this.
Can I start?
Sure.
I'm going to start with Codenames, the co-op version, at number 5.
Wow,
Okay.
Mark. There it is.
Is it Codenames
It's
Duet?
Codenames Duet.
Okay, well,
It is
whatever.
100% number 5 on my list. Codenames Duet is the co-op version of Codenames. No, Codenames Duet is actually an incredibly clever version of Codenames. If you've played Codenames but are not familiar with the way Duet works, it's a really sort of neat system that I believe was proposed by a fan and then sort of adapted into the official game. The way this works is, if you'd imagine the way that the red and the blue teams see the same card in a regular game of Codenames, your players, and that can go from sort of any number of players, weirdly enough, works best at 2, are split into 2 teams, and then there are these sort of uniquely engineered double-sided cards that have 9 green words on either side. So 3 of those words are shared between the sides, and the other 6 are unique for a total of 15 words. So the way this works is you have the key to some words on your side, and the other player or the other party or the other team has the key to 9 words on their side, and you just alternate giving clues, or you can, as soon as a clue comes to either side, they just give it to the other team until you've eliminated all the words on your side and on the other side. The aim is then to try to get all 15 words guessed in 9, 10, or 11 total guesses, depending on how difficult you want to make it. And there are 3 black words on either side, so there's this increased danger of hitting a black word that would end the game. It's a really clever system that works incredibly well at 2 players. It's a really cool version of this game that has all of the cleverness that you'd associate with Codenames, just in cooperative form.
If none of that makes any sense to you, because I still can't quite figure out how it's working on the back end, you're basically playing co-op Codenames. You're essentially trying to give clues to guess words, but the tension of teams and rushing to victory is a little bit lessened because it's cooperative.
Right.
But it's quite good.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
It is very good.
I think the smartest way to summarize it is 2 parallel games of Codenames going with a shared word list. It's very, very clever. I think especially once you sort of increase the difficulty and reduce the number of guesses you have, the need to have these very creative clues that cover a bunch of cards does add to the tension quite a lot.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's Codenames Duet.
So my number 5, and just to the elephant in the room, as it were, is that co-op games are bad, and you should feel bad for liking them. But okay, my number 5.
Wait, it's on the list, Colin.
Yeah, my number 5 favorite co-op game is the Grizzled. This is a hard to describe game about World War One. You hear about the game is about World War One. It's a co-op. It's like, okay, great, we're going to be killing people and fighting the war. When in reality, this game is basically about surviving with your bros.
Yeah, exactly.
You're slowly just beaten down by weather conditions, by different effects, mental and physical, and you're just trying to survive, and you can't tell everybody the cards that you have in your hand. It's a very thematic experience type game that just feels like you're constantly being beaten down. But it actually makes you think. There's this style of game, this War of Mine I have not played, but is frequently cited as a game that teaches you about how bad war is. Well, this one makes you think in a way that I didn't know that board games could do for something so simple and light and still being an enjoyable experience. If you've not had a chance to try this, it's a very small card game. I think Coleman or Not has the latest version. That's the Grizzled.
Yeah. Again, and every time it's mentioned, the backstory, the fact that the artist died in a terrorist attack. It's a poignant game as it is, but that adds to the poignancy, I think. Yeah, I agree. I love this game. It's a great game. Easy to teach and very fun. My number 5 is Kitchen Rush. This is by the designer of Anachrony. It's a game that I didn't really expect too much from. It was on Kickstarter. I didn't really even consider backing it, but then Neelan got a copy and brought it over to
You don't back anything.
I back. Actually,
You're an infrequent backer.
Yeah, but I will be backing a game further on this list. That's another teaser for the audience. Kitchen Rush, it's a worker placement game where the workers are all sand timers. A couple of games have done this before. Walkstar, A Tale of Pirates has done this. But Kitchen Rush does it in a really good way. What you're trying to do is you're trying to fulfill orders during a set amount of time by gathering ingredients and kicking the ingredients, serving them, cleaning the dishes, and that's all represented by placing, again, these workers that are sand timers that don't activate until the sand has run out. And so you're talking to your teammates about, hey, I'm almost done getting this. What ingredients do you need? I've got a guy freeing up. I can move him here. When it comes to these type of games, I always feel like there's going to be some part that is clunky and it's going to slow the whole game down. Either like, you only have one worker and it's going to go real slow, or the sand timer's a little too long or a little too short, or it's too chaotic, and is it really even a game? I felt like Kitchen Rush nailed everything just right. All the aspects of the game worked really well, so it felt like a challenging game that was chaotic insofar as it's real time, but it's not chaotic as a result of the game design. It feels like you're actually excelling when your team is working well together.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I had a great time playing it. I think it's one of my favorite real-time games. The sand timers are a novelty, unique gameplay component, and are utilized very, very well. So yeah, Kitchen Rush, I would recommend it. I think it's flown under the radar.
I think there are a couple things that are worth saying about Kitchen Rush, which is that there's a physicality to some of the mechanics in the game that is designed to be clumsy in a way that just feels really good.
Yeah.
Like there's this spice fetching mechanic where you're sort of digging in this bag in this really bad way. Yeah. It always just feels like aggravating when you're not getting the stuff you need, but that's part of the game. It's meant to be a little bit clumsy. It's also worth saying that it's hard to talk about Kitchen Rush without mentioning Overcooked, which is the video game that very heavily inspired Kitchen Rush. If you like Overcooked or if you played it, this is very much that in board game form, and it's just as good.
All right, so that's my number 5, Kitchen Rush.
My number 4 is Aeon's End. The specific version I have and have played is Aeon's End War Eternal, which was the most recent released version. There's another one that's been on Kickstarter recently, which is the legacy version coming out pretty soon. Aeon's End is a cooperative deck builder where you're playing against a boss. The bosses are these unique different setups that can vary game to game, and they're sort of all attacking the town. And your aim is to sort of fight the monsters that they're spawning, fight the boss eventually, so before it overruns the town or kills any of the players. It does a couple of things that are pretty smart in my mind in the deck building genre. One, you don't shuffle your discard pile when your deck runs through. It just flips over and stays in order. So there's this very clever element of deciding the order that you play cards, because that order is going to be very important in your subsequent turns. The turn order is randomized so that in a 2-player game, you shuffle a deck of 6 cards. There are 2 turns for each player and then 2 turns for the boss and the monsters. So what that sort of allows is that you sort of know that you're going to have to deal with the monsters at some point during the round, but you don't know exactly when that's going to happen. So in every turn, you sort of have to be set up, but not exactly in the exact order that is going to be necessarily beneficial for you. The market is incredibly variable in terms of the number of cards. There are a couple of sort of recommended layouts, but otherwise you can sort of do it semi-randomly, Dominion style. The thing I like the most about Aeon's End is it feels like you're fighting a video game boss. It reminds me a lot of these sorts of dungeon experiences in like a massively multiplayer game where the boss has distinct phases and strategies, and every single boss you play against has a very specific arc to its turn. There are like unique rules that come into play that might affect the card marker, that might affect each of the players. And it's about sort of playing that boss repeatedly over a couple of times until you figure out the arc of its strategy to beat it. It's a really, really clever game, kind of unique in the space, I think, and I like it a whole lot. I'm super excited for the legacy version, which is out later this year. That is Aeon's End. War Eternal, specifically, is the version I've played and would recommend.
War Eternal.
Wars Eternal.
My number 4 favorite co-op game of all time, and remember, I'm already scraping the bottom of the barrel. No, I'm just kidding. I like these games. Is Burgle Bros. This is a Tim Fowers release, who is famous for paperback, hardback. He's got a cult following, this dude.
For sure. Yeah.
But in Burgle Bros, you are a team of criminals trying to break in together, Ocean's 11 style. And truthfully, what I love about both this and the Grizzled is they're very thematic experiences for being very, very rules light. When a thematic experience becomes rules heavy, I sort of leave gracefully leave the table and go play something else. But Burgle Bros has that feeling of sort of figuring things out together and escaping in the nick of time. It has a good variable difficulty, as well as having, it's really cool because you go through different floors in the game, and a lot of people have made like 3D towers so that each
Yeah.
level of it is different. So I've had a chance to play on someone's. I think you can get an official thing now.
I think there is, yeah.
That does that, but it's so fun to go from floor to floor, and there's lasers and tripwire. It feels like Ocean's 11 or as close to it as you're going to get in a board game. I enjoy it quite a lot.
Yeah.
That's Burgle Bros.
My number 4 is a game I just kickstarted, Kellen. And actually, I just got this in the mail on Saturday and played it on Saturday. This is the brand new Chronicles of Crime, which is a game sort of a la Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective. It reminds me of Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective plus Time Stories, but I think quite a bit better than both. The novelty in this one is that there's a VR component. So you can travel to different parts of the city, London, in the case of this game. And when you're looking for clues, you attach this VR pair of glasses, like connector clip thing, to your phone, and then you look at your phone through these glasses, and you can move around VR style, move the phone around, and scour the room or the park or wherever you are, and then you're calling out to your teammates what you're seeing, and they've got a list of potential objects, and as you call them out, they can pull them, make a pile, and then you can investigate them later. The game is very much app driven, but it's done in a very intuitive, elegant, to use an overused word, way. When you want to talk to a suspect, you just scan him on your phone, and you see what they say. If you want to ask somebody about another person, you scan the person you want to talk to, and then you scan the person you want to ask them about, or you scan the object you want to ask them about. No spoilers, but if you see a security guard and you ask them about a knife that you found, you would scan the security guard. Once you scan somebody, you are now what's called interrogating them. So now that you've scanned them, you can scan the knife, and then he'll tell you what he knows about the knife. Or you can scan the victim, and he'll tell you what he knows about the victim. And every time you go somewhere or scan something, which is investigating something, it adds time to the time you've used. So it's sort of like that Sherlock Holmes thing where you're trying to beat Sherlock, but in this case, you're just trying to get the best score by using the lowest amount of time. Again, I can't underline enough how smooth and intuitive this VR component is. And it's just very fun. I played in a game before. It's very fun to do this VR thing where you're looking around like the park or the room and calling out, and then you can have somebody else in your team look around and see things that maybe you've missed. The art in the VR scenes is really, really well done. The art on the cards are really well done. I hesitate to say it's what I wanted Sherlock Holmes to be, because this is a much different game. This has like a VR component that Sherlock obviously doesn't claim to have. But
how many cases?
Well, that's interesting. I think the game comes with maybe 6, but the cases are all basically through your phone. So they're going to add more. They already have some more that they're going to basically upload to the site. I don't know if it's going to be a pay to unlock thing. I'm sure that it is. But the game went fairly quickly. We all had a lot of fun. It's a tutorial mission that really gets you going. You play it in 10 minutes, but then you get the hang of how everything works. I would say if you're looking for that Sherlock Holmes solve a mystery thing, because at the end of this game, it's the same as Sherlock Holmes, where you will get a series of questions that you don't really know what they are, but it's going to be like, who's the murderer, why, how, stuff like that. If you want that, but just incredibly well done and with this very cool VR trick to it, I would highly recommend Chronicles of Crime. It really pleasantly surprised me.
Is the story interesting at all?
Yeah, I mean, the story is...
Like in the Sherlock Holmes games, I feel like they live or die on whether at the end you go, oh, that's potentially clever, or that's not something I thought of. Is there, because if it's just randomly mishmashing... Maybe
it's somewhere in between. It's not randomly mishmashing. We played one full mission, and it's the first mission, and it's classified as easy, so maybe this is part of it. But it felt to me like maybe an episode of Law & Order. Like that sort of thing, where there are a couple red herrings. It's not incredibly well written, oh my gosh, there was something I never saw. But you have a couple...
sleep last night.
Right. There's a couple potential suspects. Hey, there's drug dealer. He's probably a bad guy, but oh wait, there's this other thing. There's
he has a heart of gold though, right?
Right. Exactly.
And if you remove the VR from it entirely, is there a game?
Yes,
under
absolutely.
the gimmick?
Totally.
Great.
Totally. Yeah. Actually, you don't even need to do the VR part of it. You can just use your phone and scan the room by moving your phone around and calling things out. But that part is just a fun gimmick. And it is fun, but it's not the crux of the game. The game does not live or die by that.
I think the thing that I thought was really clever about the design of this is what you were saying, that you would add more cases just by sort of downloading them on your phone.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
you wouldn't need more cards.
You don't need more
In
cards.
fact, as I understand, they reuse the portraits and the items and that
That's
from
right.
case to case,
Exactly.
just changing the names and
Yes,
things like that.
exactly.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's very clever.
Yeah, it's really well done. I would highly recommend it. Chronicles of Crime.
Is it back to me?
Yes.
Okay, my number 3 game, or games, I should say, are the Exit the Game series. As Escape the Room games go, and there are a bunch of different sort of contenders in this genre, the Exit games are by far my favorite. So these are games that sort of attempt to emulate the escape room sort of craze, as it were. The conceit being that you're sort of locked in a location, and there are a bunch of sort of locks and cabinets and sort of chests and things, and you're sort of solving puzzles to sort of get keys to unlock new items, to get more puzzles, repeat until you sort of escaped the room, as it were. The Exit games sort of are tied around pretty loose themes, I would say. They're about as generic as they come. I think the first trilogy was a castle, Egypt, and
The cabin.
a cabin.
As generic as Marvel films.
Yeah, fair enough. But that would be sort of underselling what the chief triumph of these games is how clever the puzzle design is. These games are designed to be one and done, Exit specifically. So what I mean by that is that you're buying a very cheap box. You're encouraged to cut up the components, to sort of tear things apart, to scribble on things, to write on things, such that the game is essentially ruined by the time you're done with it. You can't hand it off to anyone. It's a little bit wasteful, but I think the experience it creates is just so unique, where there's just something pleasant about being told to like tear up things that you own, right? It also sort of lends some really creative puzzles where you're sort of overlaying pieces on top of other pieces, creating almost like 3D structures in some of the games. And I think to say a lot more than that would be to ruin what is so clever about some of these. I'm going to use the word gimmicks because a lot of them are, but they're very creative gimmicks that are unique for every single iteration of these games. These sort of like puzzle-solvy deduction game seems up your alley. This is one I would recommend happily.
I'm going to go with 2 jokes and a question this time.
Okay.
Go for
So
it.
you tell me the order. What do you want first?
One joke first.
Does it count as a cooperative game if you play them all by yourself?
I have not played them by myself, but thank you.
Don't stop lying on air. Okay, next. Another joke or a
No,
question?
well, was the first one a joke?
Oh, boom.
Let's go to a question.
How many of these have you done?
I've done about 6 of them at this point. I think that's about right.
There's probably like 9 or 10.
I
maybe
think there are about 9. They seem to be releasing them in
sort of a series.
series of 3 in per release cycle.
Before we get to the last
The
bit of
last
gold
zinger.
joke,
Yeah.
How's the quality across the 6?
I would say that I was pretty happy with almost all. The first trilogy is fantastic.
Yeah.
There was maybe one in the second trilogy, and I forget the specific one,
Sure.
unfortunately, but where I felt, okay, I kind of had seen a lot of these done before.
Okay.
One of the things I will say is that there is a central gimmick that sort of each of these things culminates in for the final puzzle. And I think a lot of your enjoyment on it like depends on how good those
I
are,
see.
because it's the last hurrah of the puzzle, as it were. And the one in particular didn't have a great one.
Okay.
So, yeah.
After we get done recording, can you show us all the inserts for these games?
Boom! I like that one. That's a good one.
Yep,
that was worth the
sure.
wait. I'm with you.
That is the Exit the Game series.
All right, my number 3. Back to talking
Oh,
about...
actually, can I say one more
no,
thing? Because
yeah.
I think it's worth saying. The player count thing is a weird one for this because you can't play this with that many people because there's just not enough like components in the box to keep everyone occupied. This is a game I'd almost say is perfect for couples or just if you have a friend. Like 2 players, to me, seems to be the right number of people. Maybe 3 at a stretch, but that would be a stretch.
My number 3 game, and once again, this feels a little bit more like an experience. That's actually not the case for my number 1 and number 2, but we'll get there. This is Mysterium. I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce the original name for this because I couldn't even do one of 2
No
of
way.
the words.
Impossible.
Mysterium is a great game. It's cooperative, but one player is doing a slightly different role. You actually may be more familiar with Deception, Murder in Hong Kong, which is a hidden traitor version in a lot of ways of Mysterium. Mysterium has shades of Dixit in it. One player is a ghost guiding people through a mansion where they're trying to pick a suspect, pick a scene, and a weapon. And they're handing them Dixit-style cards to try to get them to guess correctly. The theming of this is very fun. It doesn't really make sense if you really start thinking about it in any depth. But if you turn on ghost music, if you have the ghost be kind of funny and silly and spooky, you have a really good time with this one, just sort of screaming like, these both of these cards were blue. Like, of course, it was this scene. Why is the ghost being so stupid right now? And then the ghost is just sitting behind their player board, looking at you kind of awkwardly. I've had a lot of really, really good experiences with Mysterium. This is one that my family often asks for me to bring home for the holidays. And it's a favorite of my sister's, so I get to play it a lot. I really like Mysterium.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I've had a lot of success with family and friends who are otherwise not really into board games. They get a big kick out of this. The production is really nice, and again, the whole ghost thing and the art on the cards, the Dixit style art is really cool. So yeah,
it is one, and this is actually something that we'll be talking about shortly. The back end of this game, or sort of running the game. As a participant, it's perfect for family members if you're not being the ghost.
Yeah.
But there's something super finicky about like getting to that point with there's like a little card for every big card that's out on the board.
Oh, right.
And you've got this all behind and you're sort of like running the game as the ghost.
Right.
And that's quite a bit more difficult just from like literally a process perspective, where it's perfect for a player because they're just being handed cards and say, which of these 7 is most like what you just got handed.
Right, that's true.
That's all you have to do.
Yeah. That's very true. Very good point. My number 3 is a game I don't hear very much about, but I always have a great time whenever I bring it out. This is Dungeon Fighter. This is a dexterity dungeon crawl, but not in the sort of catacombs flick a disc around or anything like that. The way this game is played is you are a band of adventurers trying to get through a dungeon, trying to get to the big boss at the end. And the way that you battle the minions that you'll run across as you go along through the dungeon is you need to bounce a die off your table onto a target that's placed in the center of the table. The closer you get to the bullseye, the more damage you do. And all the characters have special powers. And if the die lands on a certain face, you are able to activate your powers and do more damage or heal or do one of any number of special moves, as it were. As you go along, when you kill minions, you get gold. You can go to shops to get weapons, which is another funny part of the game because the weapons that you get make your attacks stronger, but force you to throw the dice in special ways. Like you may need to put the die in your teammate's hand and you actually take their hand in your hand and flick the die by swinging their arm around. Or you may be asked to flick the die backwards or flick it off of your nose or flick it from under the table. Oh, and sometimes when you face monsters, the only way you can face them is by attacking them, quote unquote, in these weird ways. Like you have to flick a die off a card in order to make a successful hit. So, there's a lot of goofiness. I've played this a couple times now, and without fail, we've had situations where we're on our last life and we've got a monster that requires like a bullseye or a near bullseye, and we're on our last throw and we get that bullseye. We get somebody who flicks a die, hits the bullseye, and the table erupts. Like I feel like this game is like full of those moments that come from these great bullseyes and also come from the funny like ways you're throwing the dice on the table. So Dungeon Fighter, really nice production too. A bunch of expansions, very underrated, I think, and full of these really fun moments.
Yeah, this is easily my favorite sort of cooperative dexterity game. Like it's really, really good.
Yeah,
I do want to caution Uncle Cal on just issuing a little caution here that this sounds very noob friendly, but it actually really isn't. This is a niche title. It's really good.
Yeah.
I have a lot of fun with this, but it's fairly complicated for what you're doing.
Sure.
So it's like this weird mishmash of like actual dungeon crawler mechanics with bounce the die off your leg and hope it hits in the center of the hole, and that's super fun.
Yeah.
But it's more of like a gamery. It's a very gamery game.
And also in that vein, it's also very difficult, or it's often very difficult unless you're on a good run of luck. But yeah, no, that's a good point. Yes, Dungeon Fighter.
My number 2 is Spirit Island. I think to some extent this is going to be, it's certainly the heaviest game mechanically on my list, which makes it very unusual for a cooperative game because I think the rules tend to be at most medium to light for most cooperative games. Spirit Island, on the highest level, you have an island that sort of is inhabited by these natives called the Dahan, and there are invaders coming in. Each of the players assumes the role of a spirit that's protecting the natives of the island. Each of these spirits is sort of wildly asymmetric, has sort of very different sort of powers and setups. and special rules. And using your cards, you're sort of playing them in between the invaders sort of expanding onto the board, building up their towns and sort of attacking the land. So you're setting up defenses, you're sort of trying to push invaders around the board, wipe them out eventually until you've eliminated enough of them to win the game. It's a very sort of complex game with a pretty deep rule set. It's a game that can seem quite challenging. You'll very frequently get to a point in the middle of the game where you just look at the board and the amount of sort of plastic, which represents the invader pieces on the board, just seems so overwhelming that you just look and you go like, this doesn't seem possible. I don't know how that we're going to do this. But over the course of time, you're building up power. You're sort of getting better and better cards. You're sort of getting more options, more cards you can play, more energy, such that eventually you just build up enough power as a team to sort of overwhelm the opposition in a way that's extremely satisfying. There's a power curve to this game that's really, really satisfying. The things I really like about it is you can, to some extent, sort of focus on your corner of the map and deal with it, as it were, but you're forced to cooperate with people around the table in order to sort of concentrate your firepower on sort of the tougher sections of the board in a way that actually sort of actively discourages quarterbacking, because there's a lot to take in just on your end of the table. So the idea that you would be able to actively assist anyone else at the table is almost impossible. You can just sort of like vaguely say, well, can you give me a little support over here? I need a little bit more defense. If you can handle this, then I can handle that, in a way that just feels really, really good. You're sort of focusing on your own puzzle while everyone else is sort of handling their end of the board as best they can.
So I got to play this for the first time at Barrage Con, and there was some disagreement about whether or not I would like Spirit Island. I quite enjoyed the first play of it. I think we played a 3-player game, which I think is a preferred player count. I played a medium difficulty spirit, or medium complexity, which was perhaps too complicated. I had a spirit who was good at moving the natives around to help assist in the fight, so I was constantly like moving them around. I liked it a lot. I think having the different factions, you can see what the appeal is, because there's basically 10 or 15 plays just in the box, because each spirit is so different that you want to try all of them and see how they're doing, because we had one player who played the waves, and so we were trying to get everything out to the ocean, because that's how he took care of things. Yeah, Spirit Island, very popular. It's me.
It is.
All right, my number 2. My love for this game has revitalized with Quan Chai's new illustrations. This is The Game, not The Mind, an inferior product, but The Game, a superior product. This is a very simple card game where there are 4 stacks, 2 going from 1 to 100, 2 going from 100 to 1. On your turn, you must play 2 cards in either ascending or descending order, but you can't talk to your teammates. So they might have the 99, but you're about to play a 95 and ruin their day. There are just tremendous moments of screaming and laughter and saying, do you really want to do that? Like, let's think about this. This new version has really, really fantastic art. If you've played The Mind, the game is at least related to, and in my opinion, more of a gamery game than The Mind, which is very fun as a social experience. But to me, I've sort of gotten bored of it after 5 to 10 plays, where I actually feel like the game I could play for much longer. This is one of my favorite co-ops. It's very simple. It's great.
Yeah, just played this again a couple times this weekend and had a good time. My number 2 is the granddaddy of all legacy games. It's the big one. It's the one that we're all talking about. Pandemic Legacy Season 1. I actually haven't even finished this because we had people move away who were part of the group. But
are you sure they moved away? You sure they're not dead?
They were kidnapped by some random.
Have they met your girlfriend?
They have, and now I'm starting to put 2 and 2 together.
Think about it,
Mark. I need to call the police after this recording. So, is this number 1? No, this is number 2 now on BoardGameGeek. This has been supplanted by Gloomhaven. I'm definitely burnt out on the legacy mechanism or legacy style game. And so if this game was released today, I don't know if I would be as eager to play it as I was when it first came out, and that legacy shine was very new and sparkly. But this game led to a lot of incredible moments. This was the first game that I played. I know Risk Legacy sort of did this first, but it being a co-op, that whole thing about opening boxes and tearing cards was just super novel and just led to a lot of great moments. Every time we played this game, it was like a exciting new experience. I mean, I've played other Legacy games, and it still holds up. I mean, if you're a fan of Pandemic or co-op games, I would really highly recommend Pandemic Legacy Season 1. It did it first, at least the co-op style of Legacy games did first, and in my opinion, did it probably best.
I embarrassingly still have a shrink-wrapped copy of Pandemic Legacy that I haven't touched, and I'm also at the legacy fatigue sort of point now, so I don't know if I've just left it too long.
Right.
But I really want
Thank
to play
you, Charterstone.
Yep.
For burning us out. For screwing
For
me.
rubbing us the wrong way.
And if you'd like to rub us the right way, join our $100 Patreon and tell us however you'd like us to rub ourselves. On to you,
and whatever you want us to say. Once per episode, TM.
Do you know what's better than the number 2 game on BoardGameGeek, Mark?
What is that?
It's the number 1 game on BoardGameGeek. It's Gloomhaven. Gloomhaven is fantastic. It's a dungeon crawling dream. It's the best version of that style of game I've ever played. It is loosely RPG-like in the sense that it's not quite Dungeons and Dragons, but it is emulating a sort of Dungeons and Dragons experience without the sort of full-on role-playing style. You pick a character, one of like 6 basic characters in the box at the beginning of the game. Each character is a unique deck of cards. The basic mechanic when you're moving around this dungeon of monsters is you're going to pick 2 cards, and you're going to do the top action on one of the cards and the bottom action on the other cards. Each of these cards has an initiative number, and you're going to choose which of those initiative numbers to place to determine what order you go in. So there is just this great sort of decision of whether you want to use the bottom actions, which are generally sort of movement and sort of buffs and enhancements, and the top actions, which are generally like sort of attacks. And combining those cards in the right order over the course of a scenario is this really interesting exercise in hand management, because as you use cards, you're losing them, so that there's a sort of a timer on the scenarios where if you run out of cards to play, your character becomes exhausted. Once all your characters are exhausted, you lose. So you sort of have to very carefully choose which cards to play, when to use their more powerful effects so as not to lose them. It's fantastic. It's one of the best dungeon crawling systems that relies on very little dice rolling, very little luck, except for the draw of a card in a way that feels a lot more fair than the roll of a die. The thing I love about Gloomhaven in particular is it has sort of multiple levels on this sort of like carrot on the stick type feeling, where you're trying to level up your character. So there's the appeal of wanting to play more scenarios so you get more cards. There are multiple scenarios that feed into each other, so you're trying to go down the paths of these scenarios. There are certain global achievements that you're trying to achieve, and you don't know exactly what scenarios you need to do to fulfill them. Every character has a personal goal, so there are scenarios that they need. So there were just levels and levels on sort of pulls and factors playing into why you'd want to keep playing. I'm 20-something scenarios into our campaign of Gloomhaven and still loving it, because we've just recently gone to our second sets of characters each. So there are new sort of goals, new sort of things that we're all aiming and aspiring for just by virtue of having new characters. It just feels like there's so much to the game, so much in the box, and I don't see it letting up anytime soon. And that's even if there wasn't an expansion coming out very soon, which there is.
I'm trying to formulate an argument, and it's in the very early stages, so bear with me, that it's almost unfair to have Gloomhaven on the top board games of all time. And I don't want to split hairs and go, what is a board game or what isn't a board game? But it kind of is that sort of argument. It's almost like an RPG system. Like, it's essentially the game would be better as a video game. If you could all get together and play the game as a video game together, you would have more fun. Because it would
I don't think that's true. Because
it would do all of the back end for you.
Uh-huh.
You wouldn't have to buy the organizer to make the box even close,
right,
which you guys have both admitted.
Yeah.
And it would have more variety because it's not encumbered by the physical realities of the game.
But I mean, there's certainly no complaints for variety on this on my end from what the boxes I sold. But I mean, I don't agree, because I think the appeal of the role-playing game, and using this in a very general sense, is that you're at a table together and doing this as a communal experience. Like, yeah,
Dungeons and Dragons is not a board game, right?
No, I'm just saying that the appeal of that sort of loosely that genre, the appeal of doing a role-playing game versus playing a video game, because there are countless role-playing video games. Like, you know, the MMO genre it's never been stronger to some extent, but there is something very different about sort of engaging with people over the internet versus engaging them around a table. And I think, yeah, you could play Neverwinter Nights or sort of any number of video games that do offer very similar experiences to Gloomhaven, but the fact that it recreates these systems in a way in a board game while not losing any complexity and not feeling like you're pandering to sort of the dice chucking sort of nature that sort of typifies the rest of the genre, it's really, really smartly designed.
I'm in a losing position from the get-go, which is why I admitted it before I started. But it's like if a board game is literally a video game that has been translated to board form, is it still a board game? And like, do you understand what I'm asking? And I'm not. I've played 10 minutes of Gloomhaven.
Totally.
So
my quickest counter to that is that I think the board game genre predates any video games that were based on like dungeon crawl, like Hero Quest, like predates any sort of video games that would sort of try to replicate the same experience. So that's kind of just a weird question from the get-go. And second, it's 100% a board game. Like even the comparison to D&D isn't fair because I don't role play that actively in Gloomhaven. It's a board game in a box.
I think Nealon his character is like a singing bard, and he actually sings the whole time while he's playing Gloomhaven.
Pretty much.
He's uncomfortable right now. I can see it on his face.
That's my favorite part of Gloomhaven.
He's uncomfortable with us revealing this
on air
so publicly. All right, my number one co-op game of all time, I believe I've talked about this before quite a few times, is Hanabi. This is a fireworks-themed game. There's no theme. The theme is Hanabi. Hearing your friends mispronounce Hanabi over and over again is very fun. But this is a game that has a fun gimmick, which is that you are putting your cards so you can't see any of your own cards. So you're looking at everyone else's cards, and you're trying to play fireworks into rows from 1 to 5. That's kind of similar to the game, interestingly enough, but with a completely different set of rules. So you can give clues to your neighbors. You can say, these cards are all ones, or these cards are all blue. But it's what you don't say or what the context of that clue is that makes Hanabi a fantastic game. It's very hard, and groups sort of evolve their own rule sets as they go to figure out how to give each other clues strictly within the rules of what you're allowed to do. I think for a game that's $15, I've had a great success with both gamers and non-gamers for this one. It's a little too complicated for some non-gamers, but it's just so interesting when you say, remember, when you go to pick up a card, don't flip it towards yourself. You have to flip it the other way. And there's just something so funny about sitting at a table with your cards facing the other way that even just that is enough for me to like Hanabi.
Yeah, great game. This is I think a new classic in the co-op genre for sure. And I'll round it off with my number one, which is another app-driven game, a la Chronicles of Crime. This is Mansions of Madness 2nd Edition. Again, this is another game where the app integration is fantastic. You asked earlier about the quality of stories in Chronicles of Crime. That's yet to be seen because I've only played one, but the stories in Mansions of Madness are fantastic. The narration, just the way everything is handled in the app in Mansions of Madness is incredible. It's great. All the bookkeeping and everything is seamless, not arduous at all. Very simple, very intuitive. It's a dice chucker, a la other of the Eldritch Horror, Arkham Horror sort of travel the world type of game. Like those games, like a lot of the Cthulhu style games, it's got a madness aspect to it where if your character takes enough madness damage, they become mad, and then the way that manifests itself is now you must play the game with some weird thing to you. Like you may become a traitor, you may be like a pyromaniac where your character is like drawn to fires, and now your new win condition is not winning with the team, but it's like setting the place on fire, or being a kleptomaniac and now you're stealing things from other characters. It's a great narrative driven, app driven game. If you're looking for like a event game on like a dark and stormy night, Mansions of Madness 2nd Edition is just fantastic. It's great.
I won't even say anything about your girlfriend.
Okay. And so that is going to do it for our list. And I guess that's going to do it for the show. As always, you can find us on any number of forms of social media. We're on Facebook. We're on Instagram. We're on Twitter. We're on YouTube. Remember, we're on YouTube. We're on Facebook. Follow us on Facebook and subscribe to us on YouTube, and you'll be in for a treat in a couple of weeks / months or something. Big big
Couple years.
couple
actually.
years. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
this is gonna be big.
yes, that's right. We're
It's
really,
worth waiting for.
Yeah, it's a real slow burn.
Yeah.
As always, a big thank you to Heart Society for our intro and outro song, What's on Your Mind, Kid? You can find them at heartsocietymusic.com. And that'll do it. So we will now ceremoniously break our hands.
Whose hand was that?
Sorry, that was me.
What?
And we'll see you guys next week. Bye.
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 If they are, then that's
There's
great.
these like visual novels
Yeah.
in video game form
Right.
where all you're doing is taking every item that you have and showing it to every person that you meet.
Right.
And it's like, am I actually playing a game or am I
Right.
going through like a
Yeah,
ridiculous...
this is not quite that. I know what you're saying, and I was worried about that. But there's at one point we were starting to do that a little too much, and then at one point, like the chief called us and said, "I just need an answer. Like you have, like basically you have to come in right now and tell me what you know."
Stop showing your pocket watch
Right.
to every person you've seen.
Yeah, exactly.